And a warm, beautiful welcome to everyone participating in the Zoom. Welcome, welcome. As Adam just mentioned, I'm Terrence Courtney. I'm the Director of Cooperative Development and Strategic Initiatives with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which is one of our offices. Our administrative office is based here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also the president of Shared Capital Cooperative, and I'm on the board of directors, obviously. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the 2024 Shared Capital Cooperative Annual General Membership Meeting. As you may or may not know, Shared Capitals, this is our 45th annual meeting. So quite a run, quite a stretch, and we're proud to help continue that great legacy. I now call this meeting to order. And I also want to acknowledge a couple of people. I'm joined today by two of my fellow officers, my colleagues on the board, Charity Schmidt and Holly Jo Sparks. So let me pass this first off to my colleague, Charity. Charity, take it away.
Thank you, Terrence. So I am Charity Schmidt. I have served on the Shared Capital Board for 2 years. I'm currently a secretary, and I served on the loan committee before being elected to the board in 2021, since 2021. I am a cooperative developer housed at the University of Wisconsin Center for Cooperatives, and I manage the Madison Cooperative Development Coalition. So I'm clearly based in Madison, Wisconsin. Welcome to everyone for joining today. We're really excited to be here with you. If you need the agenda, minutes, and financial statements for this meeting, you can find them on our website, and I'm sure Adam or someone will also pop them in the chat for convenience. Thank you in advance. So regarding the agenda for today, the business meeting will last till approximately 12:45 Central Time. And then please, if you can, stick around for our annual cooperative forum titled this year, Solving for Gentrification and Inequity with Cooperative Ownership of Real Estate. That should be a really great meeting forum. So please join us for that. After the forum, we'll have 3 breakout rooms. Room 1 will be a deep dive into Shared Capital's financial statements. Room 2 will be a continuation of the forum discussion. And room 3, which is this room, so you would stay here if you want to be a part of a discussion about investment opportunities with Shared Capital. If you have any questions about where you feel you belong or any deeper knowledge about those chat rooms, please feel free to ask Adam in the chat with your questions. And with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Holly Jo Sparks. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Charity. Holly Jo Sparks here. Wish I could see all your faces right now. I am the treasurer of the Shared Capital Cooperative. I've been a board member for roughly 10 years. I am the executive director of the Spartan Housing Cooperative here in the Lansing area. And as most people who know me know, I also serve on too many boards and too many committees. So I've been on the loan committee. I am the chair of the finance committee. I'm on the racial justice committee. And if there's another committee, sign me up. I'd like to introduce our other board members now. I'm pleased to introduce Patrice Lockhart Anthony is the owner of Black Label Consulting in Ithaca, New York. Thomas Beckett is the executive director of the Carolina Common Enterprise in Durham, North Carolina. Enrique Blanco is the chief operating officer and interim executive director of the Latino Economic Development Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Anna Boyer, bookkeeper, C4 Tech and Design in New Orleans, Louisiana. Terrence Courtney, who is our board president. And as Terrence mentioned, he's the director of cooperative development and strategic initiatives for the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in Atlanta, Georgia. Alexandra Devandra, Aligned Law in Portland, Oregon. Camille Kerr, the Vice President of Shared Capital Board of Directors, and also Principal of Upside Down Consulting in Chicago, Illinois. Rapa Maka is the President of Nexus Community Partners. in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Julie Risto of the Minnesota Commons Land in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Charity, who we've heard from earlier, Charity Schmidt, Secretary of the Shared Capital Board and Coordinator of the Madison Cooperative Development Coalition and Co-op developer at the University of Wisconsin Center for Co-ops in Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you all for serving. It's such a pleasure to be among this group of board members, and I'm going to hand it back over to Terrence.
Thank you again. Thank you. Well, 45 years ago, a group of cooperative leaders came together to create a self-help revolving fund. Today is Shared Capital Cooperative, and it has grown to become a national fund. Being a cooperative has helped us stay true to our roots. Today, we are owned by more than 300 cooperatives and still provide essential financing to co-ops. I want to thank our members, partners, allies, investors, friends for being here today for the 2024 Annual General Membership Meeting. And I would also like to thank our generous sponsors. Some of those generous sponsors include, just a minute here, we have the National Cooperative Bank as our premier sponsor. So we want to extend a very extra special thank you as a premier sponsor. Our additional sponsors include Capital Impact Partners, the National Cooperative Grocers, Survey and Ballot Systems, Wegner CPAs, the International Center for Cooperative Management at St. Mary's University, the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, Triangle Park Creative, Dorsey and Whitney are just a few more of our sponsors. So we want to give some very special thanks to all of them for supporting our annual general membership meeting. So at this time, we're going to pass it back to Charity, who's going to talk to us about some of the other matters on the agenda.
Thanks again, Terrence. All right, let's get down to some business. We are obliged to let you know information about the notice of meetings and the procedural issues leading up to this. So the notice of this meeting was sent by postal mail to all members on April 10th, 2024. And regarding our Board of Directors election, it is my pleasure here to share with you the results of the 2024 Board of Directors elections. And just some background contextual information, Shared Capital Cooperative has an 11-member Board of Directors. They are democratically elected, as you know, by our members in a competitive election. 10 seats are nominated and elected by our cooperative members, and 1 seat is nominated and elected by our individual members. This year, there were 6 seats up for election. 5 cooperator member representative seats, 4 of those with 3-year terms, and 1 of those seats with a 1-year term because it represents a seat that a board member stepped down early and creating that opening. 1 individual member representative seat was up for election this year. And the individual member seat has a 2-year term, and again, having to do with the timing of someone exiting the board as our individual member. The call for nominations went out in February 2024, and voting was held in April 2024. And first, before I make those announcements, I want to thank all the candidates who ran for the board of directors this year. I think it says something about the reach and impact of our organization that we have such competitive elections and such great people engaged with Shared Capital Cooperative. So we really want to thank people for stepping up and running, and again, recognizing that that represents the great work that Shared Capital as an organization is doing across the country. So our new board members starting 2024 are Samantha Bailey, Christy Broughton, Richard Dines, Anthony Goodwin, and Cecily Morales. And the individual member representative elected is Matthew Epperson. And remember, as part of the election, you received candidate statements. So if you want to get to know those folks a little better, of course, reach out, but also the candidate statements are available for review. So congratulations to all the newly elected directors. And also we want to give a big thank you to our directors who are stepping down this year. So regarding our outgoing directors, we really want to thank Gail Patrice Lockhart Anthony, Alexandra Devendra, Camille Kerr, Julie Ristow, Thomas Beckett, and Rapa Mecca. And Rapa, it is worth mentioning that he served on the board for 7 years and Thomas was on the board for 9 years. So again, just a statement about people's dedication to this organization. We deeply appreciate all of your service and really want to extend our thank you. And with that, I'll pass it back to Terrence.
Thanks again, Charity. Well, pretty much anybody close to shared capital can recognize some of the impressive strides that we've made, but we want to kind of share those with you at this time. So we want to talk about how much 2023 was such a phenomenal year. Shared capital grew to over 25 million in total assets. So that's doubling our assets since 2018. Our lending reached a new high point with a growth of more than 50% over the prior year. We made 33 loans totaling more than $13 million. That brought our loan portfolio to $23.5 million with 112 loans to cooperatives. Also, an important accomplishment of 2023 was the development by our board of a racial and economic justice statement and our racial and economic equity and justice lending policy. The statement can be found on our website. The process was led by Camille Kerr and Patrice Lockhart Anthony, who served as co-chairs of our Racial Justice Committee. The policy and statement were approved by the board in December 2023. In 2024, staff is developing a work plan for the full implementation of the new policy. Also in 2023, we had a tremendous lending impact. Our lending continued to have a positive impact for cooperatives, their members, and communities. 85% of the loans were high impact, going to co-ops made up of people of color, low-income communities, women, and LGBT communities. 40% of our loans went to co-ops that were majority owned by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So I think we have a chart coming up, and it's going to show a graph. And this chart shows our lending to people of color from 2016 to 2023. And at this time, I want to hand it over to Christina Jennings, who is the Executive Director of Shared Capital, to dive a little bit deeper into our report. Christina?
Thanks, Terrence. Thanks, Charity and Holly Jo, for heading this up. Appreciate your work. I am thrilled to be just coming back from a 3-month sabbatical that was supported by the board. It was an incredible privilege to be able to step back, take some time to reflect, and restore myself. So I am thrilled to be back back in my role, but really appreciate the board support and the staff support to make that possible. As Terrence said, I think the last year has been pretty remarkable. We've grown considerably, both, as he noted, doubling our assets, but also doubling our lending over the last couple of years, really allowing us to get more dollars out into the hands of cooperatives. One of the things that we've seen is not just our growth allowing and to meet that demand, but we've seen a really skyrocketing demand from co-ops as more co-ops are formed, starting up, as more co-ops are formed through the conversion from existing businesses to cooperative ownership, and as existing cooperatives continue to grow to meet the needs of their members and their communities. So we are thrilled by that, but we also know that that support has been able to be partially driven by the increased investment in funds like ours. So money coming from our members, but also coming from impact investors and other values aligned investors has really helped make that possible. And so, as you may recall, we have 4 operating strategic goals and continued to work towards those in 2023. So our first goal was really around growth, but not growth just for growth's sake, growth really to support sustainability of the fund and to ensure that we could have a deeper impact. Our second strategic goal is around deepening our impact through increased work in racial and economic equity and justice. And so that has also, as you heard, driven a lot of our work in recent years as we work towards that goal. Continuing to work towards that goal. That will be an ongoing process. Our third goal is really about expanding awareness of our fund. We know that often we can be a bit of a well-kept secret, and so making sure that the co-ops and our potential investors and other supporters know about the work we're doing. And finally, our fourth goal is around continuing to build our internal capacity to make sure we have the human energy and also the technical capacity to meet the needs of a growing fund. So we made a lot of investments over the last year in both our team and in our technology to better support our lending. But I want to make a few comments about the external environment as well. I think that the current environment has driven there's a lot of exciting work going on in cooperatives. As we said, that's driving a lot of increased demand for loans. But there also are a lot of financial challenges that many of our co-ops are facing. The high inflation and high interest rates are impacting all businesses, and co-ops are not exempt from that. And so there is still a lot of uncertainty for co-ops as they continue to navigate the changing economic environment. Because of the high interest rates, that had another impact on us. We saw a real slowdown in new investments in mid-2023 as folks could get a higher interest rate return on their certificate of deposit or savings account than they could by moving their money into shared capital and other groups like ours. What we heard from folks is they still wanted to invest, but it was easy to sit out and wait a few months before they made those decisions. And so that did slow down new investments coming in. We have seen a resurgence of new and increased pace again of new investments coming in late 2023 and 2024, but that hasn't allowed us to catch up from that pause we saw last summer. And we're just trying to make sure we get the message out that while we understand that return is important, that we want to make sure that those committed to our work continue to make investments and move their money into groups like ours that are trying to really make a difference with their dollars. Our interest rates to our borrowers remain really, really flat, and that means that we also can't increase the return to investors simply because of the external environment. We're committed to providing a steady return to investors over the long haul and a steady cost to our borrowers over the long haul as well. So a couple of other things to highlight in 2024, in late 2020, in 2024, I am jumping ahead to 2024. We will be winding down our 3-year Regulation A direct public offering. 3 years is the maximum time that the Securities and Exchange Commission allows for those offerings, and so we will need to wrap this one up. We do plan to launch a new offering in the fall, hopefully seamlessly allowing us to continue to take investments before the end of the year into the new offering. We don't expect any big changes. We don't expect any significant return changes on our offerings, but we will be tweaking some of the details of the offering and updating all of our financial disclosures and organizational disclosures. So watch for that late in the year. Again, folks can continue to invest through the existing offering up until the end of October. And then again, we hope to have a new offering in place in time to have that just continue starting in early November. And The other thing that we'll be doing in 2024 is working on our strategic planning. The board will be, the board and staff will be diving into really trying to look forward and see where our priorities and goals need to be for the coming years. So we look forward to that. We'll be engaging members and allies and partners in those conversations. But we do expect 2024 to continue to be a strong year of lending. We're still seeing huge demand. We are having to really pace our lending. We will still do a very high volume of lending this year, but we're having to pace it to keep pace with our capital as we have available capital. This has meant turning away co-ops that we hate to turn away, and our only solution is to really ramp up the capital availability. And so we're looking for those opportunities through collaborations and partnerships, through foundation investments, through impact investors, and of course through our members. So we will not stop lending, but we will have to keep it on pace until our dollars grow to reach the level of demand. So just a few other things I think for 2024, as Terrence noted, I just want to echo that a critical piece of work this year will also be really working to build out the work plan and implementation of the new racial and economic justice policy. And so we'll be the team is working hard to look for ways to increase the data that's available so we can better reflect, share where we are in terms of our lending, but also to work qualitatively to see how we can better meet the needs of communities of color and cooperatives that are being formed in communities of color to support that work. So look forward to working with all of our board, staff, and members to continue to make that happen. And that's the end of my comments. Let me pass it back to Holly Jo.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina. I am going to be talking about the financial report along with Andy. As you've heard from several of our speakers, 2023 was a strong financial year for Shared Capital Co-op. In addition to the strong growth, we also demonstrated a strong financial performance. We again in 2023 received an audit. That audit was performed by Wegner CPAs, one of our sponsors today, and a firm based in Madison, Wisconsin, that has significant experience working with both cooperatives and with CDFIs. I'm pleased to report that once again, Shared Capital has received a clean audit with an unqualified opinion. So I really want to thank and appreciate Shared Capital's finance team for all of the work that they did in preparing. It's also my pleasure to share that Shared Capital's Board of Directors approved a dividend for Class A preferred shares. So the 2023 dividend is a 5% return. A total of 164,761 were issued in dividends. All of those dividends were issued in additional shares and are pro rata based on the 2023 holdings. The notices for those will be going out to members this month. Unfortunately, and also because of our continued effort to increase our collective retained earnings, we will not be issuing patronage dividends to the members this year. I am now happy to turn it over to Andy Shively, our controller, for the 2023 financial report. Andy, as well as the team at Key Figures, provide our bookkeeping, accounting, and controlling services to the Shared Capital under contract. So thanks so much, Andy. Over to you.
Thank you, Holly Jo, and thank you to everybody else who's here today. I'm excited to be here again to share information with you about Shared Capital's financial performance in 2023. I will start by noting that the slides that you'll see during my comments are a very condensed version of our audited financials. The full audited financials are available in the link that Adam shared earlier, sharedcapital.coop/annual meeting, and the full report will be available on the website as well. So, as you can see from the balance sheet, we have continued our multi-year growth trends. Our total assets increased 11% year over year, ending 2023 at more than $25 million. Thanks to record new lending, we saw significant growth in the loans receivable portfolio. Our loans receivable increased by more than $6 million or 37%, ending the year at more than 23 million. Now, such a strong lending year has enabled us to move a lot of the excess cash that we had on hand at the end of 2022 into the cooperatives, into the hands of cooperatives across the US. This did decrease our cash position by roughly 50% compared to year-end 2022, ending the year at roughly $3 million. However, we have retained comfortable liquidity at year-end with a current ratio of nearly 1.4. Now that we've gained this excess cash, now that we've moved this excess cash into the hands of borrowers, this does leave new lending much more dependent on new capital raise as we move into 2024, as Christina previously noted. Looking at our debt capital, we did see a net decrease of $700,000 in our investment notes payable, going from 16.1 million to 15.4. Now, these investment notes are a key source of the capital that we use to fund increased lending. While we did raise nearly $2 million in new debt investments in 2023, this was partially offset by repayments as notes matured. But the big driver of the net decrease was a conversion of $1.5 million of debt to revenue through debt forgiveness as part of the Accelerate Employee Ownership Program. So while we did see a decrease in our investment notes payable, our overall liabilities increased by $2.3 million. Now, this was thanks in large part, though certainly not exclusively, to a new line of credit that we've opened with NCB. And that line of credit will be key to managing our cash flow while remaining focused on our mission of getting capital into cooperative hands. While our total debt capital decreased over the course of 2023, we did see a 16% increase in our preferred shares, ending the year at nearly $4 million. Looking at our collective capital or retained earnings, because we closed yet another profitable year, we were able to improve our collective retained earnings by $18,000. Now, our net income was certainly more than $18,000, but after the 2022 preferred share dividends, which are recognized in 23 when they're declared by the board, ultimately the shift we were able to make in that number was $18,000. So while it's modest progress toward our goal of improving our collective retained earnings, it is progress nonetheless. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So moving on to our income statement, in 2023, we continued to see revenue growth in both our earned and our contributed revenues. Our revenues related to lending, so that's the interest and fee income line item that you see, those revenues increased by 36% over the prior year, continuing to improve our ability to cover operating expenses with reduced reliance on grant funding. Now, while we did recognize $2.2 million in contributed revenues in 2023, up nearly $1 million from the prior year, this increase was largely due to pass-through grants to various partner projects and was offset by the significant increase in the contributions expense that you can see below. Moving on to expenses, our interest expense, which is the interest that we pay on the debt capital that we use to fund the lending to cooperatives, that interest expense held fairly steady year over year. Personnel expenses increased 16.8%, thanks primarily to being more fully staffed than was the case in 2022. You'll notice that all of our other operating expenses also increased by 13.3%, due primarily to a mix of inflation and the increased costs that come along with being fully staffed and accomplishing so much in terms of new lending. Provision for loan losses, kind of down toward the bottom, that is a non-cash expense. It's tied to both the risk rating and the overall size of the loan portfolio. Now, that expense more than doubled in 2023 compared to 2022, coming in at $448,000 for the year. This increase was driven primarily by the velocity of new lending and the growth of the overall size of the portfolio. Ultimately, bigger portfolio, you need a larger reserve. In fact, the overall risk rating of the portfolio decreased in 2023. While we started the year with a loan loss reserve at 9% of the loan portfolio, we ended the year at 7%. So, trending in a positive direction. Overall, the cooperative remains on a solid financial footing and continues to make progress toward our fiscal goals. However, the velocity of new lending will need to be tempered to keep pace with new capital raise as we move into 2024. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Holly Jo.
Thanks, Andy. And can I just say, Andy, thank you for always making this information so much more accessible and explaining it in a way that I can better than I ever could. And also thanks to the whole team and Mark Downey for always having this information excellently prepared and taking the time to answer all the questions the Finance Committee and others on the board might have. Really grateful to you for another great year. I now want to also introduce the rest of our great and excellent team. Teamwork makes the dream work, as my 4-year-old tells me a lot. In order, let's see the slides. We've got Gabriel Chapman is our program manager, and a longer description you all have left in the chat so you can learn more about their work. Mark Downey is our Director of Finance and Operations. Mark Fick is our Senior Loan Officer. Christina Jennings, who we've heard from earlier, is our Executive Director. Ashley Long, one of our loan closers. Roderick McCulloch, another loan officer. Adam Trott, who we heard from earlier, the Director of Member Relations. Mike Seo, Portfolio Manager. Rhonda Weidling, Operations Manager. And Esther West, a loan officer. Thank all of you so much for all of your hard work and dedication to the mission of Shared Capital. Back to you, Charity.
Thanks, Holly Jo. So moving on to unfinished business, the next item on the agenda. And there is no unfinished business on the agenda, so we're moving ahead. Question and answers. We only have a few minutes, so we'll just take a few brief questions, unless staff tells me time does not allow. And those will be fielded by Adam and Christina. And remember that there will be more time in the breakout rooms if you have more detailed questions or we don't get to your questions in this agenda item. And it is my understanding that Adam is always on top of these things, so probably following any questions in the chat.
Thank you, Charity. Right now, I don't see any questions that can't go into the sessions later. So I think if everyone's okay with that, unless someone wants to drop a question in the chat now, we can just move the questions over toward the to the breakout rooms and continue on with the program.
Okay, sounds good. So the remaining agenda items are, well, it's new business. So if there is no new business, I will pass it back to Terrence to adjourn the meeting.
Thanks again, Charity. Well, with that, I want to again take time to thank everyone who took their time out of their busy schedules to be here today. Very grateful for that. I also want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, especially our premier sponsor, the National Cooperative Bank. And so at this time, I'd like to get a motion from the board to adjourn the 2024 annual membership meeting.
I'll move.
And a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay. All those in favor of adjourning our meeting at this time, signify by saying aye or raising your hand. All those opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We've adjourned our meeting today. Now we're moving into the breakout rooms. Christina.
Actually, I'm going to hand it to Mark Fick. Mark Fick is the Senior Loan Officer with Shared Capital, and he will be moderating the annual cooperative forum and will share more about the topic. Mark, I hand it to you, and make sure you've got sound.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Terrence. Thank you, Christina. Welcome to our annual cooperative forum. I'm Mark Fick. I'm the Senior Loan Officer with Shared Capital Cooperative, and I'll be facilitating the forum today. We will start out hearing from a couple of forum speakers and then open up for some questions. We ask that you please enter your questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can along the way. The discussion can also be continued in one of the breakout rooms for this topic. And so we welcome you, encourage you to join that breakout room if you want to talk more about our topic for the day. We'll guide you through that in a little bit as we get to the end of the initial part of the forum here. Quick update that one of our speakers is having some technology challenges right now, so I'm hoping that both of our speakers can join us, but we will have a good discussion either way. So we'll update in just a minute here to see how that's going. This year, as you saw in the title of the forum, we're talking about real estate and specifically about using cooperative ownership to address the effects of gentrification and inequitable development. For several years now, there has been an increasing interest across the United States in taking ownership of the physical assets, the real estate in our communities, and giving people who have historically been and currently actively are prevented from owning real estate. As we will hear today, this can be a way to build wealth, to stabilize small businesses, and or more generally give people control over and see the benefits from development. This is not a new idea. As you'll hear, Mercado Central has been around for 25 years, and this is by no means exclusive to Minnesota, but we're going to focus on the Twin Cities a little bit because we've seen a larger than average number of groups actively working on this in this region. There are at least 7 real estate cooperatives at some level of operations or in formation right now, and several more using other land trust or nonprofit models to accomplish similar goals. There are quite a few, there are dozens of groups around the country that are exploring this model as well. In 2020, following the murder of George Floyd and the uprising, there was terrible destruction and damage across the region from Lake Street and Broadway Avenue in Minneapolis or University Avenue in St. Paul out to surrounding cities of Richfield and Brooklyn Center in the suburbs. People knew that development would come to repair this damage, and they knew that unless they changed the process, the rebuilding of their neighborhoods would follow the inequitable trends of accelerated capitalism. So they took the cooperative tools that were already being developed in the region and groups that were already talking about this model, and they stepped directly into the development process to make sure that people come first, that Black and Latinx ownership is fundamental for equity, and that BIPOC-owned cooperatives are the next wave of community development. We've invited 2 guests to share more about their stories of this work. Denise Butler is the Associate Director of African Career Education and Resource, Inc., ACER. Denise and ACER facilitated the development of Ignite Business Women Investment Group Cooperative, IBWIG, which purchased a shopping center in Brooklyn Center in the fall of 2023. And Juan Linares, founder of Mercado Central, is a Latino marketplace of 35 small businesses on Lake Street in South Minneapolis, located in the epicenter of much of the damage along Lake Street in South Minneapolis. We're going to hear hopefully from both of them. I know that Denise has joined us already, and Juan is working on getting connected right now. So I'll ask that we can pull Denise up on the screen as well with me, and would invite you to talk a little bit more about the purpose and mission of your cooperative, a little bit about who the members are, and why would someone join your cooperative, and what kind of benefits they would get out of that experience. Denise, thank you for joining us.
I don't know, is it allow me to turn my camera on?
Yes, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay, there I am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Butler. I'm currently the Associate Director at ACER, and ACER is African Career Education and Resource, Inc. And just a little bit of context. So Mark shared some of the cultural backgrounds in his opening conversation here. For us is directly to the African immigrant community. It's called SUSUs. And so what has happened is these SUSUs are like money pots or our own banking systems that the women in this community and men throughout the African immigrant community has created to provide ways to have supplemental income or access to capital for their businesses. And so in 2019, I started working with these women who were, it was 8 women at the time, who were actually doing that type of match savings or creating capital because they were business owners for to supplement their business operational cash flow. And so
Denise, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to mention that I don't think we can see you in case you wanted to share your camera.
It says I can see myself. I don't know why. What else do I need to do? I think I can see myself. And I see Mark.
That's good. That's definitely good. If you can go to just your name.
I think no, that's not what's going to show. It's going to have me show a tab.
At the top of the window, can you see the camera and mic icons?
I do.
Is there a line through the camera one?
No, it's on.
Okay, fascinating. Well, I'm just going to stop interrupting you and let you keep going. Really sorry about the trouble, sir.
Okay. I apologize if I'm not being seen by folks. And so fast forward to through COVID, they decided 8 women grew into a business network of 60 women. And out of that 60, 25 came together and said they wanted to start a real estate investment cooperative. And, the history of that conversation really goes back to the fact that if you come to the northwest suburbs of Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center, Crystal area, there's a lot of these BIPOC businesses sitting in old office spaces. And so to them, it was like, we need to have more ideal commercial spaces that are affordable, access to affordable commercial spaces. So it's all those underlining things that really push them to say, hey, we need to own our own piece of real estate. So let's come together and do it. And having all of them already kind of cooperatively bringing money together, it was just easy to move them into this more formalized structure, which is a cooperative ownership model, right? And so for the real estate investment cooperatives, a lot of the businesses are individual. A lot of the cooperatives are a mix of individual business owners. IBWIG specifically is all female business owners. And right now, I think their membership is at about 28 women who are part of that cooperative. And it's all females. And then another real estate investment cooperative that we have been able to bring together is about 13 business owners and counting, because they're still fundraising. So that number has increased even more as of yesterday. And they're coming together, and that's a mixture of both women and male business owners that are coming together, again, around a real estate investment cooperative. The mission of these cooperatives is to be able to provide affordable commercial spaces to BIPOC business owners so that they can move from these non-conventional spaces, which have been allowed them to enter in the market in a more affordable way. And so they can move from those non-conventional spaces to be able to grow their businesses and provide affordable space for other businesses like theirs to enter into the market. And so, we're talking about ethnic businesses who are really the economic engines of their communities. When you talk about Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park being both majority BIPOC citizens living in both of these cities. And the businesses are majority BIPOC businesses in both of these cities. But that ownership piece has become really, really, really important. And so their mission for both cooperatives is providing affordable commercial space, and then also ultimately being able to create that generational wealth, provide that community wealth building opportunity as well. And I'll just stop there for now.
Great. Thank you, Denise. And for better or for worse, we're still having trouble connecting with Juan at Mercado Central. I can offer a little bit of background on that important real estate cooperative as well. But we may have more time to dive deeper into IBWIG and your successes there in Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park. As we're still trying to get Juan on board, but for reference for y'all, a little bit of background, Mercado Central is a Latino-owned cooperative marketplace. They have around 35 to 38 businesses at the intersection of Lake Street and Bloomington Avenue in South Minneapolis. and has been in operations since 1999. In the 1990s, the East Lake Street corridor, Commercial Avenue, was suffering from disinvestment and a lack of economic activity. And a couple of nonprofit organizations began to work with a group of Latino community leaders in that part of the city and proposed a marketplace idea, kind of replicating the Mercado structure from other parts of the continent in Central America. And so the idea took off, and with the support of Neighborhood Development Center and Project for Pride in Living, a couple of local community development and economic development organizations in Minneapolis, they were able to purchase their property and renovate it to become the marketplace that it is today. And hopefully we can bring Juan on still to tell us a little bit more about that story. But back to you, Denise, I'm curious kind of why you chose, or if you have a sense of why you chose using a cooperative model in particular, instead of maybe a more common or more traditional community development corporation, a nonprofit, or a land trust model, and what motivated the group to choose this particular ownership model?
They really wanted to be a thing where it was for profit, first of all. That community wealth building was important. That generational wealth building was important to them. And so they wanted something a model that could be utilized for profit. They looked at all the current existing barriers they were facing individually, having access to lending. And they understood the power of coming together collaboratively to be able to limit some of those barriers. And the cooperative model really helped to limit some of those barriers, where sometimes credit score, not necessarily bad credit score, but lack thereof credit score, as when these businesses have not been able to access lending because they've been just told no. And so therefore, when they know that that is a huge hurdle, is like, we haven't been able to access lending. Our lending history for our businesses is important, which allows us to be able to access the capital to purchase commercial space. It's not there. And so this model was able to eliminate that, to some of those barriers as well. Those are just some of the reasons why. And for them, it was really important to be able to come together as a group. And the model really lends them to be able to come together as a group as well, too. So it was those components that really helped them to land at the cooperative model. That trust was already there, I say, in the form of a SUSU, because normally, traditionally, how that has worked is every 2 weeks, there's a set amount that everybody agrees to put into the pot, right? And you put in that pot, maybe it's 250 or maybe it's 500, whatever it is. And they've opened a bank account together and able to be able to put in that pot. And so what happens then is, let's just say we take turns taking from the pot to be able to utilize that capital to do, maybe it's for our business inventory, or maybe it's down payment for equipment, whatever the person wants to utilize that in the form of a sususu. The cooperative allowed them to do that because they were already used to coming together, putting money in a bank account. And some of these people, I think that was really great about this IBWIG story too, was this happened in the midst of COVID. And so for 2 years, they only met via virtual meetings on Zoom or Google Meets. And they didn't know every single body. Like, everybody didn't know each other. And for 2 years, they raised over $250,000, not even knowing each other. And so when they finally got together and they were like, oh, you're so-and-so, I recognize your voice, and you're so-and-so, I was like, wow, this is powerful. You guys had that level of trust. That's important. And so I believe that the model provides that democratic process, that trust process, that relationship piece, and then again, back to that cultural component that's been important for all of them, and why they came together.
Great. Thank you very much for that, the additional background there. I do think we have Juan on calling in on the line here. So Adam, if you can give his 612 number access to talk, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. He should have that. I think, Juan, you might just have to unmute yourself as well and then speak to see if we can hear you. Maybe while we just give Juan a second, Terrence, did you have a question now? I just see your hand up.
Yes, I did. I don't know if it's an appropriate time for questions, but I guess I'll go forward since you asked. I guess my question has three parts, and I'm really curious about the formative stages of your cooperative, namely how. I guess the first question is how much conscious intent was there with the group in terms of creating the cooperative to combat gentrification? Two, did you utilize feasibility studies to assess the development of your cooperative? And third, what was the length of time from beginning to end?
Great questions. So there was very consciousness around gentrification, specifically that a lot of these business owners, they were sitting in 5701 Shingle Creek Center, 3300, and these are office buildings in Brooklyn Center. And then one of them in Brooklyn Park, AIG, the other newly formed cooperative, they were in a business executive office that got a new owner, and the owner decided they were going to evict 18 of the businesses who had been there since 2005. And these businesses were all insistent and intentional in staying because they understood their target market and staying in their communities in Brooklyn Center and Brooklyn Park. And that's why they wanted to come together. They not only wanted to stay in their community, they understood that because they existed where they existed together in that same office building, they were able to drive traffic ultimately to them. Because ethnic businesses, that's the kind of traffic you get at a H&M or a Mall of America, is not there. And so they know that when they're all in the same space, and they continue to stay in their community, that is ultimately viable to the success of their businesses. So that was really at the forefront of why we must come together, especially when I said 18 businesses who have been sitting in the same office space, executive office space since 2005, was pushed out in 2021, 2022, when the building got flipped. It was sold to a new owner, and the owner decided, I don't want these businesses in this building anymore. I want something different. And now they were made to move. The feasibility part, yes, they know they can be together in the space. They know how much rent is going to take, but that's where ACER comes in with that technical assistance. That operational piece is not something that they're familiarized with, right? They haven't been business commercial owners before. They don't understand having operational dollars, having a property management, and all the other various costs that goes in with commercial ownership, right? And again, those decision-making pieces that's going to take to move them forward. That's where our technical assistants come in as ACER, as we continue to provide those pieces. It was never looking at, so when they went to purchase something, we would do the pro forma. So we make sure that it's cash flowing because we didn't want them to get into something that was not going to make money. So yes, definitely, we know our ethnic businesses are not used to debt. Some of it, a lot of it do be by choice sometimes, and then haven't been able to access debt. So therefore they're not used to debt. And so we don't want to put them in a situation where they would fail, and we want them to be successful as possible. So we do provide a pro forma, look at the cash flow. Is this building going to make financial sense? Are you guys going to be able to afford it? Will it be able to make money for you? Because ultimately, they want to be able to get those profits through their investment. And also another gentrification was because it was the pandemic and they were facing eviction. And when we couldn't traditionally organize like how we normally would, they did a car action ultimately to address eviction with their landlord, and having to do that really, really, really pushed them to move forward with the mission and why it was so important.
Great. Thank you for that additional background. We'll try one more time. Juan, if you can hear us, could you try unmuting and joining us? Hopefully we can get you connected. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think we have Juan able to speak, but I don't think it's working for Juan. I
Okay.
wonder if we should try to keep have Denise and Juan move to when we do a breakout session.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we
Can you
are.
can you hear me now? Oh, I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I have
Thank
to
you.
really apologize to all of you. I'm just not too savvy on all these team meetings, and I never used this before. But at any rate, enough of that. So where am I? Where you want me to? How do you
Yeah,
want me to start?
thanks for making it in. And fortunately for all of us, you are savvy at organizing small businesses into a cooperative. So I would love to hear, and I did share just a very kind of high level background about Mercado Central and its structure, but did not go into any details. But I would love to hear from you, Juan, if you could talk a little bit about the purpose and mission of the cooperative, who the members are, why someone would join that cooperative, and sort of what the impact it's had over the years. And I'll hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the Mercado Central in Minneapolis is a retail business cooperative and an incubator at the intersection of Bloomington and Lake Street. And this was the result of a creative and hard work of members of the Latino immigrant community that joined forces with a faith-based organizing group and a variety of community organizations to build a tradition marketplace in the inner city of the neighborhood. Currently house 40 businesses at the Mercado Central, and as a result of that synergy that developed among those groups as they work together to make their vision a reality. And just to give you a little context, the Mercado Central was started in 1991. We began to organize in the Latino community. And just for your information, the 90s was an influx of immigration from all over probably the American continent, from Mexico all the way down. And also second migration from different states from the United States, from Chicago, California, Iowa. So, and the reason why is because Minnesota had the, the tradition of Minnesota Nice, and also having the a place of opportunities. So in 1991, we began that organizing through the Hispanic Organizing and Outreach, which was a nonprofit that grew out of this movement and created, give a name to a community that I was looking for a place to worship, a place to gather, a place to, let me say, a sanctuary place, so that they can feel comfortable being and speaking their own minds. And in 1996, we began the process. I heard a question about the feasibility study. I'm not going to answer that, but let me just allude to that the Hispanic Organizing Outreach did an organizing and door knocking in a radius of 3 miles. And the center point was a congregation called St. Stephen's, which is on 22nd and Clinton. And those 200 visits were met 2 purposes: to come and worship at this community, and if they were invited to be part of a growing Latino immigration or migrant community. And everybody agreed to do that in 1996. It was the time in the year where the Mercado became a vision or an idea. And in that time, we began to organize within this parish. We did what we call an in-reach organizing, and that's how we begin to recognize and identify the assets and the capacities and the talents that there were in this part of the community or in this parish. So the vision of the Mercado took place by answering questions, and we did sort of like a survey and about all the issues that the immigrant community was facing. And to tell you the truth, there was about somewhere between 15, 20 issues. And we helped them to identify 5. They prioritized 5 issues. The first one was education. The second one was immigration, dealing with legal counsel and trying to get some documentation in line. And the third one was access to capital. The fifth was jobs, and the fourth was jobs, and the fifth was housing. So that's how the vision of the Mercado Central started in 1999. It took about 3 years to organize the community, to get partners together from faith-based, from community developers, and also we used 2 important disciplines. One was the asset-based community development, and the other one was the traditional community organizing. And these 2 disciplines create a cohesive and powerful approach to build that community. And the combination of these 2 models, it was necessary to generate the force that was important for the creation of the Mercado and the creation of a home, I would say like a home-like community gathering place for community to come together, not just also the worshiping place, but also a place where they can do business and become business owners. We use a tool called the Capacity Talent Inventory, which was the asset-based community development. We were so grateful and lucky enough to meet John McKnight, who was the author of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute. And he shared with us a tool called the Capacity Talent Inventory. And that's how we did this uncovering the gifts and the talents of the community. So after every service, we invite folks to come for coffee, and we did this Capacity Talent Inventory with pair up people in 2s, and then we give them this tool and they interview one another for about 15 minutes each. And that's how we find the, and I would say the talents and the gifts that everybody brought to the table, or to the project or the idea of the vision to create a Mercado. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if this makes sense for you folks. And if you have any questions, I can answer accordingly.
Yes, thank you very much for the background and describing what brought folks together and how that process happened. I'm wondering if you could just paint a bit of a picture of what Mercado Central looks like today, and what sorts of businesses are there, and how the cooperative is functioning these days.
We still have 99% capacity. We only have one place that is up for rent. And at this particular point in time, the Mercado Central has accomplished the goal that our partners help us to be part of this ownership. And I'm happy to tell you that when the Mercado Central decided to sign the lease contract with the developer, which was Project for Pratt and Living, they said yes, the leadership said yes, with the option to buy. So that option to buy to be owners of the real estate happened in 2019. In 2019, we did the transfer of ownership of four owners, which three of them were nonprofits. The Mercado Central is a for-profit, so that you know. So these partners helped us to accomplish our goal. In 2019, the Mercado Central became the owner of the real estate. And right now, the vision of the Mercado Central is to become we inherit an old building, and it's 3 buildings in one, and that was a very challenging project. But nevertheless, it's 1 building right now, and we are in the process of becoming a little more eco-friendly, thanks to the city and this organization, Share Capital. We have accomplished to purchase solar panels. We first repaired the roof, the entire roof, and now we have purchased 120 panels. And in order to continue maintaining this real estate, the Mercado Central is working on reducing the cost of operating in this economic inflation that all the bills went up, like the electricity, gas, water, and all the elements that take to maintain a commercial building. So thanks to the city, we got a grant from the Cost Green Share program. And right now, the Mercado has received the first installment from Excel Energy. We turn on those panels in 2023, January of 2023, and this January of this year, we receive our first payment of $1,200, which we believe that within 3 years, the Mercado Central will have paid off the entire system and begin to reduce the cost of the consumption of electricity. And right at this point in time, also we're trying to expand our membership. So and have some of the renters or people that are part of the second floor to become members of the co-op, non-voting members. Because the Mercado Central, the structure of the Mercado Central is 51% Latino owned, and the rest will be invited to be part of the membership. And that it's something that we're working on, and also we're working on becoming using zero plastic and more organic, and control the waste so that we can continue controlling the cost of operating this old building, which is about a little over 100 years old. And the other project that we're working on is to, through the Mississippi Water Management and Metro Bloom, we got a grant for to rebuild our parking lot. After the COVID and this George Floyd, uprights, we suffer a little bit, and now the Mercado Central is trying to bounce back a little bit more and more every month and probably every year to go back to where we were. And we're not there yet, but I think with this improvements and resources that have been available through the city and through other organizations to continue supporting And the Lake Street redevelopment, and I'm glad to tell you that we're in the process of remodeling our parking lot. And this year, the Mercado Central, hopefully, we're going to finish before our anniversary. Mercado Central will have 25 years of being in this wonderful business crossing, important crossing of Bloom Lake, which is one of the 4 main crossings that the city is paying pretty much attention to continue supporting our small business development.
Great. Thank you
I
very
hope
much.
I answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's really great. We've got maybe time for just one more question from the group if there's anyone who has a specific question. Otherwise, we'll start to, I think, move towards our breakouts.